Go get something else.
Like what?
like a rope or something.
There's no Sears and Roebuck here. Grab the snake.
You know, I don't like being the guy to arrogantly say what a movie's gonna be like before it comes out, even if it is Disney, but
It's a film about letting go of the past and moving forward, but one that refuses to do the same.
given that that's IGN, the same company that wouldn't give a bad score to this, or either of these, I think the Dial of Destiny may be the safest thing to bet against being good since the third season of Batwoman. So, before this becomes the new worst movie in the franchise, let's talk about the current one. Released in 2018 to mixed reviews and still directed by Steven Spielberg, The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is an odd movie to place. Critics don't seem to mind it, while audiences hated it, and it really did split the franchise down the middle. There are 2 movies people loved and 2 movies people hated. This will obviously change soon, but until then, I don't think there's a bad Indiana Jones movie. In fact, I kind of like Temple of Doom. It's not as good as 1 and 3, but it has a lot of great moments. I agree that 4 isn't the best movie, but honestly, I don't think it's terrible. When the common fan knocks the film, 2 things usually come to mind. The aliens.
Why aliens? Aliens don't belong in an Indiana Jones movie!
Man, the scene's so fucking stupid, I don't even know if Dial of Destiny could top it.
Do you remember that scene with Indiana in the refrigerator? It didn't make any sense, Dad.
Keep in mind, the South Park version of this movie is about Steven Spielberg and George Lucas raping Indiana Jones, and yet this still fits in. The reason I'm still defending this, despite that, is because I don't think this can be defined by 2 scenes. Yeah, the latter is more like the plot than just a scene, but similar to Jurassic World, I think you need to consider more than just that. Granted, the Dial of Destiny is probably going to be like their Fallen Kingdom, but until then, I think this movie may be getting a bit too much hate. Given the fact that such hate has existed for 15 years, I don't see changing anybody's mind, but I'll give it a shot. This is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The movie opens in 1957 with, oddly enough, Soviet agents engaging in a muscle car race. And by engaging, they really do engage. I mean, look at their reactions. You can tell they had fun making this, and it's just a great idea for an opening. A nod to the classic 1973 movie American Graffiti, you really gotta appreciate... What? Fine. In actuality, we open with a CGI gopher. And to those of you who complain non-stop about the CGI gopher, it's honestly completely out of place when you consider the rest of this. Most of the movie is done with practical effects insisted upon by Harrison Ford himself, along with doing most of his own stunts despite being 66 and even using a real whip. The movie was shot on film to mimic the look of the previous films, something Dial of Destiny likely won't have, and the cinematographer was told to study those films to create a similar look. So in the end, the CGI gopher may not be as awful as you think when you consider the authenticity in this movie. They arrive at Area 51, the same place the first movie ended, and are told by the guards they can't come in. I'm not sure about the shoelace thing, but aside from that, a pretty badass scene. Kind of like Indy's intro, which I really think they nailed. Throwing down the hat, the shadow, this line.
Russians.
And honestly, maybe the best. We then meet the true main villain of the movie, played by Cate Blanchett, who is not the most memorable villain from this franchise.
Because I know things. I know them before anyone else. And what I do not know, I find out. Now, what I need to know now is in here.
Nor is she the most original. And And I don't know what that's about. I mean, I know she's supposed to be telepathic, but I probably would have just let that out. And the point is, he has to help find what she wants, and since he knows the box is magnetic, he uses gunpowder to find it. And I gotta admit, I really like how the crowbars get magnetized too. It's just more detail they really didn't have to add. That's gotta suck. I hope he doesn't have to shoot for any reason. Well, somebody's getting accidentally shot today. But what's this? His partner, Mac, played by Ray Winstone, is a traitor. But given the fact that I've had no reason to mention him yet, well, what do you expect?
I like Ike.
I don't know. This leads to a shootout, and it's pretty damn good. It's got some great stunts, memorable lines.
Damn, I thought that was closer.
Lost Ark cameo. And this great moment when Indy throws Spalko out of her Jeep because he can, I guess. They don't even zoom in on it, it just feels authentic. He gets into a chain fight with the sub-boss, and apparently only Mac knows to avoid the giant exhaust. However, this extremely convenient escape means we've reached the scene. And despite this video clearly being in the movie's defense, this is the dumbest shit in the franchise. I don't care about the aliens, I don't care about whatever the fuck Dial of Destiny might pull. Nothing is dumber than this fucking scene when Indy avoids a nuclear explosion by hiding in a fridge. And it's a shame too, because up until then, the scene is actually good. It has a fun feel and definitely has suspense, but once you figure out what's going on, there really is no way to rewatch this without laughing at its stupidity. I mean, they even have the nerve to give him a radiation shower. I mean, now you want to use logic?
Don't you know it's dangerous to climb into a refrigerator? Those things can be death traps.
And a bit of exposition explains that Indy was there when the box was recovered, but still doesn't know anything about it. But the point is, the FBI in this movie are intent on being as cliché as they can, and the university isn't too keen on federal agents going through Indy's stuff, as it looks bad, so he's put on paid leave.
Indefinite leave of absence.
That being said, it is nice that Charlie resigns too, and other past characters, including his dad, are at least mentioned. Say what you want about this movie, but there is some devotion being shown here.
Seem to have reached the age where life stops giving us things and starts taking them away.
I'd give it a few more years. 15 to be exact. However, on his way out, he's met by Mutt Williams, played by... not gonna attempt that. Who tells him that Indy's former colleague, Harold Oxley, also Mutt's surrogate father, found some kind of crystal skull in Peru. The problem is, Oxley, along with his real mother, have been kidnapped and will soon be killed if they don't find the skull. He gives Indy the letter she sent, which he can't read, and it turns out the two guys in suits that have been following him are not good. Luckily, they have a plan.
That's my boyfriend!
Yes, because why wouldn't that cause literally everybody in there to start fighting?
Your mom didn't escape. They let her go. So she could mail a letter. And you could bring it to me and I could translate.
Oh, now it all makes sense. And that's some bad exposition. Unfortunately, the chase isn't much better, and probably the worst action scene in the movie. It seems to favor comedy for whatever reason, and aside from this clever Marcus Brody reference, most of it doesn't land. I mean, tell me what kind of sense this makes.
Excuse me, Dr. Jones?
Yes?
I just had a question on Hargrove's normative culture.
I cannot figure in what universe why you would respond that way. His chair literally moved. Here's something that's not gonna age well.
You know, for an old man, you ain't bad in a fight.
Thanks a lot.
What are you, like 80?
Don't be stupid, only Disney would market that. They head to Peru, and we get our classic Indiana Jones method of fast travel. They even bring the bike because, I don't know, it never gets used again. Can't really blame them after that last scene, but why even hint at it? They find some engravings that Ox made, leading them to the grave of Francisco Orellana, an area that I think could have benefited from making the imminent danger a bit less obvious. I mean, imagine if you really had to pay attention to see this guy, opposed to it being impossible to miss. I think that would have been a lot better. Oh really? Who would have seen this coming? They fight them off via a pretty inventive kill, and I do really like the scene that follows. The scorpions, the moving platform, it feels like it belongs in this movie. And by that I mean this franchise, as just saying this movie doesn't mean that much. They eventually locate the skull, as Orleana's body isn't supposed to be magnetic.
But then he returns it here. Return.
Well, given the fact that you just explained that crystal is not supposed to be magnetic, and the whole power thing, maybe there's a good reason as to why he returned it. What, did they just stand there waiting, holding their guns, hoping they'd eventually come out? I mean, they must have had a few miscellaneous bad guys to send in. They're taken to the Amazon, not that Amazon, leading to a line that I personally like.
Third time I've saved your life.
Unshackle me, I'll give you a big hug.
And one that doesn't quite land.
Eventually they're gonna let me out of this chair, comrade, and when they do, I'm gonna break your nose.
Why his nose? I mean, what he's done is pretty bad. Why not his neck? Spalko explains that the skull is actually an alien skull from the mythical city of Akator, and if returned, can give them control over its power to be used as a weapon, and you know the rest. We also finally see Oxley, played by John Hurt, who appears to have gone insane from staring at the skull too long. So they figure if they make Jones do the same thing, maybe he won't go insane and lead them to the city of Akator. Of course, since she's the bad guy, she does explain what she'll do with this power in great detail, and also...
Your hands off me, you rotten, rusky son of a bitch! Indiana Jones.
It's Marion, again played by Karen Allen, who, get this, is Mutt's mother. It turns out they broke up after the first movie because that's literally the way it has to go, and she can now be used to force Indy into doing what they want, even though he already agreed.
Terribly ingenious, highly imaginative, incredibly inventive.
Mutt devises an escape plan after they get what they need, so they could have just left them alone. But I think the only reason for this is so they can get caught in quicksand.
Dry sand pit.
I'm sinking,
Quicksand
but I'm
is
calm.
a mix of sand, mud, and water.
Which is a fun scene for the trailer, but honestly kind of stupid. First off, why would you send a crazy guy to get help and then complain about the obvious outcome later? They clearly give his wife something else to use, opposed to the big snake he's afraid of. The sinking process gets significantly slower as time goes on, and despite there being a few ways to get out of wet sand, this ain't one of them. Oh, shit, I'm sinking. It'll probably stop in a minute. Just go and find something to pull me out. Ideally, something I'm afraid of. Oh, and remember to like the video and subscribe. It's weird. But it's not completely pointless, though, as we do find out this.
He's your son.
My son?
Why the hell didn't you make him finish school?
Which, in retrospect, isn't that surprising, but at least it wasn't overused yet. They get caught and proceed to argue.
I think we both knew, Marion, it wasn't gonna work.
You didn't know that. Why didn't you ever talk to me about it?
Because we never had an argument, I won.
It's not my fault if you can't keep up.
I didn't want to hurt you.
Not the most sensible argument, but it is pretty damn funny. The guard even ties up her mouth, which still doesn't do any good, but it does give them an opening. This allows them to immediately make up, commandeer the vehicle, and put an end to the operation with a fucking RPG. Are we supposed to believe that didn't kill anyone? Like I said, not the best villain. The scene that follows is again real memorable, utilizing Mutt's fencing skills, something I assume the movie forgot about, and it's revealed that Mac is actually a double agent, making him somewhat less forgettable. The comedy here is good too. I especially like this one guy who just bails out, and overall it's real damn fun. I can't see any good reason to dislike it. Well, that's kind of odd. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, it doesn't ruin the whole scene, but what the fuck were you thinking? Oh, come on, there's no way that wouldn't have killed any of them. This brings us to the divisive
big damn ass
scene, and it's the best part of the movie. I don't know if that calls for a "are you out of your fucking mind" clip, but I really don't see why this scene's so divisive. Insects are by no means new to this franchise, or even this movie, and while I don't know if these
big damn ass
are really this deadly, they do give us the only real memorable kills in this movie. Also, it's a leftover scene from The Last Crusade, and I have a feeling it wouldn't have been as disliked in that. I do question how Marion managed to obtain this vehicle despite all the
big damn ass,
but I guess that's what off-screen bits are for. The sub-boss wants to take on Jones at the worst possible time, but luckily the
big damn ass
are afraid of the skull. Unfortunately, he's kind of like a Dark Souls 2 sub-boss, therefore much tougher than the main boss. But like Souls 2 itself, cheat methods are usually the way. Damn, that's disturbing. I mean, I assumed we'd get a memorable death, but shit. They escape with the skull via stupidity, and I think it goes without saying that logic's not a thing here.
The skull has to be returned. I'll do it. Nobody else has to come.
Yeah, that's gonna happen.
Why you?
Because it told me to.
Which has kind of been the goal throughout the whole movie. And I like that. Nobody else mentions this, but this is the only movie so far in which the objective is not to simply find a piece of treasure that he'll obviously lose. Don't know why they're explaining this to us again now, but it's still a nice change. We're reminded that the skull is not human, and they're attacked again by the tribe of anti-subtlety. Maybe you shouldn't take that thing back. It's pretty damn handy. It's then revealed that back in his cell, Ox figured out the way in, being a sacrifice. No, I'm just kidding, but what were we supposed to make of that? Was he supposedly gonna kill him? Well, anyhow, the actual means of entry is not that complex, and they locate. Yeah, I'll admit, the movie from this point on is kind of stupid.
Sorry, Jonesy.
So what are you, a triple agent?
Nah.
Mandy's back to being forgettable, but the double agent line was okay.
Positively shocking.
She reconnects the skull, immediately proving to be a bad idea, but luckily it only seems to affect Russians. You know, because they only cast Russians. Another example of this film's authenticity.
A portal! Halfway to another dimension!
Don't think we want to go that way.
I'm sure you don't. I mean, they may be aliens, but they're probably not going to allow these. Max Scree does him in, as it has to, as he's also a liar. And given that he makes no attempt to get back up, he must agree. No, really, Indy even says, "Use your legs, I can't do it alone." He's clearly devoted to this role. Then this happens. Yeah, I know it's stupid. Velko gets her lackluster death, and they escape via convenience. Don't look at me, I agree it's fucking stupid. I don't know what the mindset was behind this. What I do know is that despite this stupidity, the final scene is actually pretty good and gives Indy a proper send-off. A proper send-off that Disney is currently fucking, but that was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And despite aliens being in an Indiana Jones movie, and the scene with the refrigerator that didn't make any sense, it's not that bad. I know this stuff can't be overlooked, but when you think about it, the alien plot may not be as detrimental as it's made out to be. The two movies that people like feature a chalice that grants immortality and the Ark of the Covenant that melts off people's faces, so I don't know if an alien skull is a good enough reason to hate the movie. It has other flaws too. Mutt's not the most memorable character, the inclusion of Marilyn doesn't add that much, and the overall idea of most of the cast being his family fails to have any kind of impact. Maybe if one of them came close to death, like his dad in The Last Crusade, but instead they just make up immediately and get married in the end as if nothing happened. This is honestly the movie's biggest flaw, and if you were to replace them with a basic love interest and a sidekick, this wouldn't be an issue, yet people don't really seem to talk about this. Instead, they complain about two things that don't take away from the movie that much. There's lots of memorable action scenes, only two that I really don't like if you don't count the fridge. And my apologies to whatever the complaint is here, but the big damn ants are one of my favorites. I do wish there was more than one memorable death, as all the other films had a lot of those, but that's still just a minor nitpick. I know hating on this is very common, but when you have franchises that have gotten so bad, some even before this came out, I just don't see why it's despised so much. Obviously, as a kid I liked it, and assumed upon rewatching it I would hate it, but in the end, it's a hell of a lot better than the fourth movie in this franchise has any right to be. When you add on the realistic stunts and authenticity, I can't help but commend it. Is it flawed in many ways? Yeah, but if the fifth movie was half this good, it'd be a damn miracle. It may have opened with a CGI gopher, but it ended on a relatively high note. That, if left alone, would be a franchise with, dare I say, no real bad movies. But left alone, it was not. Still, I'm the analyst, and remember kids, do not, under any nuclear explosion, climb into a fridge. It may not open, and it definitely won't save you. So, you've made it to the end. That's an impressive feat indeed. Since you managed that, I guess check out the gaming channel, in which I cover a variety of gaming topics, like analysis videos, such as this one. If you're into that, then press the link in the description. It's that simple.